Good morning, YouTube. Welcome to the first episode of Piped In. This is crooked. It's still crooked, but it's better. Our special guest today is the Hulk, and the Hulk is carrying with him some Arabica bean coffee from Whiteman's. And my other special guest today is the Missouri Meerschaum General. And in it, I have some Seattle Pipe Club's plum pudding. I don't know if you noticed, but it's September now, and in New Jersey, that usually means the leaves are changing, and it's getting a little bit cooler, and now the good tobaccos can start to come out. This is where I'm probably going to retire the bulk of my collection and roll specifically with Mississippi River plum pudding and my aged Virginias. Mainly the Christmas cheer. I have a 2002 and a 98 that I really have to work my way through, 100 grams of each, so that's going to be pretty much my whole holiday season. Special guest, Aristocob Golf Tea Tamper. If you don't have one of these, I think it's way better than a check tool. So on to today's video. First episode of Piped In. Piped In is going to be my series where I'll present my ideas on something and then I'll ask your opinions, kind of ending up with a question. And kind of the first original version of this was a recent video where I said your go-tos, where I'm asking you what are your go-to tobaccos and stuff like that. In this episode, I'm going to kind of step it up and make it a little bit different. We'll see what happens from here. So, I wanted to talk about things that we take for granted. And the number one thing that we take for granted. Can you guess what it is? The number one thing that I think we take for granted? Silence. Now, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but every time I make a video back here or outside, there's always the sound of crickets. There's always the sound of a car, loud music, people walking by, talking on their phones, yelling at each other, using profanities and vernacular that I haven't ever heard before, and the sound of planes flying overhead, but that's what I get for living within 20 minutes. Well, how far am I? Maybe 10 minutes of Newark Airport. Silence is one of those things that you don't really... You think about relative silence. Relative silence, to me, is... think about this. Summertime, you're laying down in bed, you're relaxing, you can hear the air conditioning. Wintertime, you're laying down in bed, you can hear the heating. You know, whether it be forced air heating, steam heat, hot water baseboards, you can still hear all that. If you're like me, I keep an air purifier running in the room. Everything is white noise in the background. Silence to us these days seems to be cell phone on vibrate, TV turned off, computer turned off, no music playing, maybe just driving in the car, maybe sitting out in the park, but even then, you really still get that constant white noise in the background. Now, I'm not counting the sounds of nature as white noise, because silence, complete silence, is really only possible in sensory deprivation, and if you've ever done something similar to it before, you'll still hear something, and normally it's things inside that you start to hear, and that gets a little bit weird. There is a room that exists somewhere, and I forget where it is, I think it's on a college campus, that is acoustically almost perfectly dead silent, to the point where you can actually hear your body functioning, which has got to be the creepiest thing in the world. And they say that, being that it almost sounds like air is being sucked away from your ears, because it's so quiet, and that people tend to start to lose it a little bit sitting in there. But when you think about it, you don't ever really get to experience complete silence. You know, when you sit down to relax, there's cars motoring by, which I'm sure you just heard the one drive past my window just now. Houses are all so close, even if you live, you know, in a nice big neighborhood and you've got 150 feet of lawn in front of your house, you're still too close to the road. I can still hear every car that goes by. As a matter of fact, I can hear most of the cars that go by 2 blocks down the road on a four-lane major road just out there. Now, Silence is one of those things that nobody ever thinks about. I just need some peace and quiet. What they really mean is they need a chance to slow down. They don't ever really actually mean they want quiet. They just want the TV turned down. They're okay with it in the background. They want the music turned down, but they're okay with it in the background. Just not so it's in your face and present. What people really, really need to do is get complete silence. You know, even if you have to bury your head under a mountain of pillows and blankets, you really need to find silence for a little while. And again, it's one of those things that we really take for granted. On when we had Hurricane Sandy blow through last year, I experienced what was going to be as close to silence as I ever thought I would inside my old apartment. Now, I lived pretty close to a main drag. I was about a block in from this same four-lane major road just down the street from me. I was a whole block closer, and we had a lot of cars that would come by just in our neighborhood area. And when Superstorm Sandy decided to blow through and take out all the power and kind of kill all the driving capabilities for the first few days in this neighborhood, that was silence. There was no TVs. Nobody's TVs were on. Nobody had a generator in my neighborhood. Everything was completely quiet. And I remember thinking, laying down at night, that I could hear the way the wind whipped through the trees. I could hear the creaking of the branches and leaves crumbling and falling. And I could hear people talking a couple houses away. Because for the first time, it was completely quiet. No one could drive around. And it was just a brand new experience. And I think until you've really felt what silence feels like, you don't know that you're missing out on it. And it's something that you really take for granted. When it does get quiet, people tend to get a little weirded out. They say, "Geez, it's awful quiet in here." Silence is not something to be suspicious of. It's not something to be suspicious of. Silence can be suspicious, but you don't have to be suspicious of it. So my question for you today is, do you take silence for granted? Do you mind the constant white noise in the background? Or do you really prefer to have some real peace and quiet? Let me know what you think. I'm looking forward to read your comments. Everybody, enjoy your pipes, and we'll see you next time.